Good evening, Praise Chapel Fresno, and all those of you tuning in, wherever you're tuning in at, whatever you're tuning in on, we're just appreciative that you're here this evening. Still going through these biblical bios. Please keep in mind that we're going to be changing up how our Wednesday nights go. I know we haven't really met at the facility in a very long time on a Wednesday night. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be continuing to utilize it as a Bible study, but doing it in kind of individual type situations. So we're going to start off with having our men's ministry and our women's ministry holding their own Bible studies, going through that. And then there's going to be some other ones that we're going to want to do throughout as in the course of time, as we're seeing how this develops. There's been a few that have actually come forward and have said, what if we did a Bible study on this? What if we did a Bible study on that? And I really appreciate it. Someone was like, Bible studies on, communication in the marriage, Bible studies on communication with our kids, Bible studies on grief, Bible studies on money management, Bible studies on entrepreneurialism. So those kind of things I really like. And because they're things that we do in our life, and a lot of times we just assume like, okay, well, there's nothing in the Bible for me on that. It's just something I'm going to have to figure out, or we're going to have to find, when the Bible gives us instructions on daily life on how to do just everything we can inside of our lives. So just I'm thinking, or we're going to start that off in May. The beginning of May. So we'll start with our men's ministry and our women's ministry holding their own Bible studies here at the church. So it's likely we might not live cast them or Zoom them unless there's a significant need. So we have someone in our church who's in the hospital right now, Brother Ronnie Hernandez, where we got our prayers for you, pal. I want your hemoglobin to stable. And hope the dizziness goes away. We're praying for you and your family, just hoping you make a speedy recovery. But in that, he's our men's ministry leader. And so he won't be joining us for the first couple of weeks just because of the fact that he will be in the hospital and recovering from that as speedily as he can. So that'll begin in May with our men's ministry, our women's ministry, holding their own Bible studies here at the church. They will not be live casted. We'll have refreshments here. It's not just a place that we're going to come, hit you up with the Bible, and then send you home. Like, we're going to make it comfortable, and it's just going to be relaxed. But we'll see how it goes in continuing to do these. So just keep us up in prayer about that, and keep praying about what God wants to reveal in your life through a Bible study that we're going to be holding here at the church. So remember, you can continue to support this church, this ministry, this move of God. You can do that with your tithes, your offerings, and your love gifts. You can give those digitally on your iPhone, your smartphone. You can find Easy Tithe app in the Apple Store and Google Play. You can also go to easytithe.com, download it on your desktop that way if you want a little bit more security. Or you can go to praisechapelfresno.com, click Give on the menu bar. It's going to take you to a third-party website that we're contracted with that you can give safely and securely there. Also, you can mail in and drop off your tithes, your offerings, your love gifts if you're joining us on our online campus only. But if you're joining us on our in-person, tithes and offerings envelopes are behind each and every one of our chairs with the tithe and offerings box located just outside this sanctuary. You can drop it off. We'll get it deposited in a timely manner. Still going through these biblical bios, and I'm looking at like every week. I have this list of people that I pray about, and I'm like, okay, God, which one do you want me to do? But then sometimes God like throws a curve, and he'll throw a scripture at me, whether it comes to like a daily devotional, whether it comes to me just opening up my word, but he'll throw a scripture at me, and one that he threw at me was coming out of the book of Numbers, and I kind of came across someone that I was like, hey, I don't know very much about him, so I'm going to study, and then I decided that y'all are going to study with me. So tonight we're going to talk about Caleb. So Caleb is referenced in the book of Numbers, and then he's also in the book of Joshua. So he's a prince in Israel. He belongs to the chief tribe of Judah. His name is literally, everyone was like, oh, his name means dog. His name is translated in its original Hebrew into raging with canine madness. Think of like a canine attack dog. That's basically what it meant. He was trained fearless. He's a furious patriot, and he was ready to do whatever it took to win. And he was always faithful in God's promises. He always held to God's promises. When his narrative arrives, he's about 40. We don't know a whole lot about him until we reach this point. But if you're kind of keeping track of how old he was or where he was at in these, so he would have been born in Egypt to get to the point that he's at right now, where he's 40 at this point, and then he'll in 45 years he's going to pop back up. So Caleb was one of the 12 that Moses had been commanded by God, send out these spies and to go look at the land and to come back and report to you. So he gets the 12. Caleb happens to be one of them. And he tells them, okay, I want you to go spy the land that God has promised to us, Canaan. So they go out, they cut some fruit down, they head back to camp. So they provide evidence of what God had promised, because God said, I'm going to bring you to a land of milk and honey, meaning just overabundance. So they're bringing back, gigantic fruit, and they're showing them like, okay, this is God's promise. Like, it really is there. But then they begin to report that the land is filled with the descendants of Anak. This is a man who fathered giants. These would be considered the Nephilim. It's fortified, it's large, and the people are far stronger than Israel. But then enter Caleb, and this is how Caleb reports it. He says, Caleb quieted the people in the presence of Moses, which is interesting because Moses was in charge and Moses wasn't quieting the people down. Caleb in the presence of Moses says, let's go up now and take possession of the land because we can certainly conquer it. He doesn't say, so we can certainly or hopefully God will be there with us and we'll win. He just says, certainly we're going to win. He's reminding them that it wasn't Moses who led this group of runaway slaves to some random location, but that God led his chosen people, Israel, to the land that was promised to their forefathers. But no one wants to listen to them. They're focusing on their fear. And these other spies, they just keep perpetuating this fear. It's getting bigger and bigger. They're so big, we're like bugs. We look like grasshoppers. We're no larger than grasshoppers to these giants. And even though they were not discovered, they put supposition into there. They say, and if they had seen us, they were not discovered as spies, but they say, and we must have seemed the same to them, but they weren't discovered. So they're kind of putting it in these people's minds like, yeah, we were no bigger than grasshoppers, and we must have seemed exactly the same to them, but no one even saw them. The people of Israel begin to lament and complain to Moses and Aaron, which they've been doing for like the whole trip this way. They've been doing this. They've been lamenting and crying to Aaron, why did you take us out of here just to kill us? Like we should have just stayed in Egypt. And they refused to enter the land. Then Caleb and Joshua tear their clothes in front of them, and they told the people of God, and they told the people, God promised it to us. It's we have to go and claim it. And this is what it says in 14:9 of Numbers. Only don't rebel against the Lord, and don't be afraid of the people of the land, for we will devour them. Their protection has been removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. They hit a point where the people that are hearing this threaten to kill them if they don't stop. And then immediately after they say that, it says God appears before those that are meeting with Moses in a tent, and he's speaking directly to Moses, wanting to kill everyone. He's like, how many times have they just turned their backs on me? And God calls it 10 times they've turned their backs on me. But Moses, he just wants to kill everyone. Moses calms them down and is like, okay, God, like if you bring us out here to this land and then you kill them, I don't think that's going to look very good to all of our enemies, that you would bring your own people out here and kill them. God agrees, but Moses says, let the punishment just be on like the fathers that are doing this. Don't let the punishment fall on the third and fourth generation. And God says, no one who witnessed the miracles of Egypt and in the wilderness, anyone 20 years or older will enter Canaan. Then God points out Caleb. And in Numbers 14:24 it says, but since my servant Caleb, now he's doing this in front of Moses and the elders inside the tent, but since my servant Caleb has a different spirit and has remained loyal to me, I will bring him into the land where he has gone, and his descendants will inherit it. Caleb has been witness to some of these events that God has listed. He's about 40, so he definitely falls into that category of not being able to enter, but God says because he had a different mind, because he had a different spirit, I'm going to let this curse pass from him, and he will enter the land. And then God kills the other 10 men. Like the other 10 spies that gave the bad report, God kills them. Then 45 years goes by with no mention of Caleb, no mention of what God had promised. But that's because what was Israel doing for those 40 years? They're wandering the wilderness until that generation dies out. Caleb technically belongs to that generation, but God's going to allow him to enter the land. 45 years later, Caleb re-enters the picture. After Israel is conquering the land of Canaan, they're under the leadership of Joshua because Moses has passed on. He's died, and it comes to them like starting to divide up the territories and who's going to go to what tribe. And then Joshua 14:6 says this: the descendants of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephthah and Kezite, said to him, you know what the Lord promised Moses, the man of God at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me. So Joshua was the one that was there with them, picks up after Moses. Caleb is like, yo, we were both there. You heard it, I heard it, God said it, Moses said it, you heard it, I know you did. He's reminding Joshua of the thing that God told Moses about him because he gave the honest report some 45 years ago about how those who spied with him stirred up the fear, causing the people to lose heart in Israel, and not enter the land way back when, just as God told us to do. And then Joshua 14:9 says, on that day Moses swore to me, the land you have set your foot will be an inheritance for you and your descendants forever, because you have followed the Lord my God completely. Now, he wasn't disrespecting Joshua. He wasn't disrespecting those that had been placed in leadership over him. He was just reminding him of what God had promised him. Now, Caleb will enter the land, and he'll be given a very specific place where he cut the fruit from. It's a land that's really rich in agriculture, so the fruit's gigantic. But he's telling them, look, I did the work in there. I put my foot in the place that was very abundant, and God said, I'm going to get that when I go in. And he's just reminding Joshua. And then Joshua 14:10, as you see, the Lord kept me alive these 45 years as he promised. Since the Lord spoke this word to Moses while Israel was journeying in the wilderness, here I am today, 85 years old. First what he does is, Caleb gives Joshua what man had promised to him. This is what Moses had said in the presence of you and me. But now what he's doing is he's underlining it, that it's God who has allowed him to enter the land from a generation God had sworn would die before they enter the land. He's just saying, look, it wasn't just Moses that made that promise. Moses said, God's going to keep you alive and you're going to enter that land. And he's saying, I'm 85. I was 40. I should be dead. God kept me alive so that I can take the land that he's promised me. And he knows that the descendants of Anak, the giants, the Nephilim, the ones he saw 45 years old, are in his land. And I would he's probably at this point is just like, let me go get some of this. I'm going to go to my land, and I want these people out. They're taking up my blessing. So Caleb gives Joshua what the man had promised him, but then he also goes along that and says, and then it was God that kept me alive and allowed me to enter. Then Joshua 14:12 says, now give me this hill country the Lord promised me on that day, because you heard then that the Anakim are there, as well as the fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me, and I will drive them out as the Lord has promised me. I like the perhaps that he throws in there. He's not discounting God at all, but he is letting him know, I am 85 years old. I may not be as spry as I once was 45 years ago. But he says, and then I will drive them out as the Lord has promised. So he's leaning on God for that miracle, but he's letting him know, I am 45 years old. So Joshua gives him the specific land named Hebron, and Caleb walks in and he kills the greatest giant living there, and the sons flee. They flee to a nearby city, and he continues to pursue them specifically because they were the sons of the giant that he just killed. And it's kind of the whole David and Goliath thing, I'm going to kill the giant, but I'm going to make sure that I get the rest of his family, that I'm prepared for the rest of his family. So he doesn't want them to wait for a good opportunity for them to come back and try to retake their land. He knows he's 85. He just took out the biggest, baddest dude in Hebron, so it's likely he's a little tired. So he turns to the people that are following him, and he says, if anyone will go into this city, attack and kill them, I will let you marry my daughter, Acacia. She's very influential at this time as a wife. To anyone who attacks the land, they fled to. His nephew kills the three sons, captures a city called Kirath Sefer, and he marries Acacia. Okay, yes, they're cousins, but that was common back then. He dies at about 100 years old. Doesn't really say how he dies. He just kind of disappears from picture. But he dies in the land of milk and honey on the best agricultural piece of land available at that time. And Caleb's is really one story of like someone who remains faithful to what God has already promised. Like, Caleb didn't hear it from God's lips. Caleb heard it from Moses. Caleb heard it from others that were saying, like, God had promised this land to our descendants, and this is who we're going to. But Caleb had enough faith in God to say, like, okay, if he said it, like, why are we not following what he said? And I love it. People are like, even those that say they really want proof of God, and they say, you know, why doesn't God just come down in a big booming voice? Why doesn't God just show himself, like, to prove who we are? Because he did it already, and we killed him. And so Caleb is sitting here, and he's one of the most faithful people you can read about in the Old Testament, because he's heard it from generation after generation that God had said this, and he's like, why are we not doing this? Like, if God said it, like, let's go and get it. But dying at about 100 years old, he gets about 15 years on his land of milk and honey. But yes, his daughters, his sons, they inherit the land as well, and they continue to work it. So here are 4 lessons we can learn from the life of Caleb. Number 1, don't let negativity influence your calling. Here's a man that's not just facing negativity from the 10 other guys that he went with. Now, they were all chose. They were kind of like probably the ones that are just about to become leaders in their families, and they're chosen to go out there. So they're people he probably knows well. And they probably travel in the same social circles. But even his brothers, in a few moments, he's facing the negativity of an entire country, being threatened by the elders with death if he doesn't stop pushing the issue, because he refuses, God spares him from the curse placed on hundreds of thousands of people, including Moses. See, the enemy's going to surround you with all kinds of negativity that will get louder and louder, trying to stir up your fear, trying to get you to stop from reaching what God has promised you. Look, remain as steadfast as Caleb. Like, if God has said it, like, it's not going to end. Like, if God has said it, it's going to come. Now, you might have to wait 45 years for it, but that doesn't change that God has said, I'm going to send it. Now, see, although Caleb is spared from that curse of death, he still has to endure the wilderness. He still has to endure going through all this and saying and still believing, like, yes, God is going to come. Like, they're getting attacked every other day by some random tribe. Like, things are getting stolen. They're dying from plagues and sickness. And that whole 45 years, Caleb is sitting there and saying, like, okay, it's going to happen. Okay, it's going to happen. God promised it. Even when the 40 years ends and probably the last descendant dies, he still waits another 5 years. Look, don't give up on it just because there's a lot of negativity surrounding you. If there weren't so much negativity around you, I would say then you're not a threat to the enemy. Then what God has promised you is just on the other side. Because that's the only reason why so much negativity begins to build up in your life, is because you're just about to have a breakthrough into blessing. Number 2, remind God of what he's promised you. See, Caleb gets a hold of Joshua and he says, yo, remember this? Remember when we were in that tent and God came down and he was talking to Moses and said, I'm going to kill all of them. I'm going to destroy them. Moses is like, look, that doesn't look good to the people. And God's like, Moses, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to kill all of them, and then I'll restart and make you a great nation. Because he wants to wipe out Israel. Because they've refused to follow him 10 times. And Moses is like, no, they're good people. Like, let's give them a chance. Like, don't kill everyone. Just, like, don't let them go in, and then don't let it pass to the 3rd and 4th generation. And God agrees. But Caleb the whole time is sitting there and saying, at 85 years old, is still alive because God promised it, and Moses proclaimed it. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 62, it tells us to remind God of what he's promised us, not to stay silent. I would think it would be a little disrespectful, like, hey, God, you promised this. Like, remember when you said this? He's all-powerful, all-knowing. Yeah, he remembers. But the book of Isaiah says, look, remind God of what he's promised. Don't stay silent about it. It's not disrespectful to let God know what he's promised you, but you have to have faith that he will provide an answer, that he will provide it even if you have to wait 45 years. Even if you feel like you've waited really long for God to move, just remember, the entire generation was gone. Caleb was probably like, okay, now's my time. We got a new guy, Joshua. He's a friend of mine. We were both there in the spies. We both came back and gave good reports. It's time to go take the land. He has to wait another 5 years. Number 3, dwell on the promise, not the giant. On the first round when Israel's brought to Canaan, 10 of the spies come back and and they're talking about giants. They're fearing the giants. They've shown proof of how prosperous the land is, how great this land is, but all they can talk about is the giants. They're not focused on the promise that God had made to their lineage thousands of years ago, which results in their expulsion. Now, the second time around when they follow, I love it because when Joshua tells Israel, we're going and we're taking the land of Canaan, like everyone's like, okay, we're all going and taking the land of Canaan. We're going to do what you tell us to do. And if anyone disobeys at all, we kill them. Because they didn't want to spend another 40 years. But Caleb comes back, and he doesn't want anyone living on the land that God had promised him, goes in and kills the biggest, baddest giant he could find, but does not give up until the lineage of the giants was killed. Look, stop letting these giants dwell on your promise. These giants are anything that you're facing, anything that you're having problems with, anything that is coming against you. You're letting it dwell on these promises, and God is telling you, you have to walk in. You have to step in. And even if it's like, well, I've been waiting this long, yes, walk in and claim your victory. These things we can't see past, these things that are standing up against us, when it seems like you don't have the power to overcome, guess what? You don't. God does. Walk as Caleb did, like he's 85 years old. Now, I don't know if he walks in the land and everyone's like, oh, who's this? Like, I don't know if he's carrying a sword. It doesn't say. But he goes in and he kills whoever he can find to prove that this is his land, and everyone flees. You need to walk in, clear out, root out anything attempting to keep you from the promises that God has given you. Leads me to number 4, victory needs to be claimed. Even at his ripe old age of 85, he walks into town confidently, faithful, that if God promised it, he would walk in that land and enjoy it no matter who stands against him. Nothing was going to defeat him, just like he proclaimed 45 years ago. God has removed their protection. Let's go in and get them. He finds and kills the largest giant in the land, and the others flee. No matter what others look at as a hindrance, means anyone can stop God from fulfilling his promise. Your promise is waiting to be claimed. Your blessing is waiting to be claimed. You're not going to have to face and overcome these obstacles. That's always going to happen in our lives. Caleb has to go in and get them out of his land. He doesn't just sit there and say, okay, I guess I'll wait until their generations die off. He tells Joshua, that was mine. It was promised to me. Now let me go get it. Let me go take it. But victory is to be claimed, not requested. You don't ask for victory. You claim your victory. So that's the book of Caleb. Don't forget, we're going to be kind of changing up our Wednesday nights coming May. We'll be doing our Bible studies where our men's ministry, our women's ministry will have separate Bible studies here at the church at the same time, 7 o'clock. Doors will be open. We'll have refreshments and stuff, so please, just come, enjoy. It's going to be comfortable, relaxed. You don't have to wear church clothes. Pastor will wear appropriate stuff, but I'm just saying, it's not going to be like a service. It's going to be a Bible study, what you would normally wear if you're just going to someone's house to talk, appropriate. But we'll be doing that for a while, seeing how it goes. And then we've had some suggestions of some other things that we can kind of do Bible studies on and have groups with and discuss and ask questions, communication in marriages, communicating with our kids, how to deal with the culture, grief and counseling, and how we go through those kinds of things. We've had financial ones, entrepreneurship, things like that where people really want to, get in and see what the Bible tells us, how to operate these things in our lives. So we'll be kind of rolling that out and seeing how it's going. We'll try it, and if it doesn't work, we'll figure out what God wants us to do after that. But that's what we'll be doing starting May, the first Wednesday in May. So we'll keep that posted and keep announcing that as we get closer to it here, which I think, isn't it next week? Yeah, it's next week. So we'll be starting May 3rd Keep our brother Ronnie up in your prayers. Ronnie Hernandez, he's still at Community Regional Medical Center. Pray that his hemoglobin goes up and that the dizziness goes away. I got my eyes on you, bro. I got people just watching you left and right, texting me, reporting to me. You may not see them, but there is a specific purpose to that, but they're there nonetheless. But I just appreciate everyone tuning in. Remember, you can continue to support this ministry, this move of God, this church, with your tithes, your offerings, your love gifts. You can do that through Easy Tithe, an app on your smartphone that you can find in the iStore or Google Play. You can also go to easytithe.com on your desktop, download the app that way, connect with Praise Chapel Fresno. You can go to praisechapelfresno.com, click Give on the menu bar. It's going to take you to a third-party website we're contracted with. And it's safe and secure. Or if you're joining us on our online campus only, you can mail in, drop off your tithes, your offerings, your love gifts to our address. If you don't know what that is, just Google Praise Chapel Fresno, California. You'll see our address, mail it in, we'll get it deposited in time and manner. And if you're joining us on in-person services, we have our tithes and offerings envelopes behind each and every one of our chairs. You can fill it out and drop it off in the tithes and offerings box located just outside the sanctuary, where we're going to deposit in a timely manner. But I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Really appreciate all the texts and all the things that people are telling me that's going on in our lives, God moving, and just amazing things that are happening. It really pumps me up. Just makes, I can't tell you how happy it makes me, like, when you guys text these things, like, to a point that I'm so excited about stuff that I can't even sleep at night because of what God has done in your lives. And for those of you that are saying, like, well, I'm still waiting for God to do something. Well, if he's promised it, be like Caleb, get them giants out your land and claim your victory. But we love you guys. We'll see you this Sunday, 10 a.m. Text someone, let them know that we're having church and that God is on the move. Bring them closer and closer and closer to the fire. They will catch on. But we love you guys. We'll see you Sunday, 10 a.m.